This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, Ted Landau is back one last time, at least for us, before the big holiday weekend. You may not hear this until after the holidays, so if you don't until then, happy Thanksgiving late. And Ted, to you, happy Thanksgiving early.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and to all your listeners, especially in the United States, where we celebrate Thanksgiving, unlike some other countries who may have no idea what we're talking about. And let me just say this, going into the holiday season, actually. Apple is scheduled, from what I've read recently, to sell an incredible record number of iPhones over the holiday season, having already sold an incredible number of iPhones over the holiday season. Its stock is at an all-time high. According to Walt Mossberg and other articles that I've read, the Mac's market share is larger than it's ever been and continues to dominate, particularly in the not really dominate in majority of sales, but appear to dominate when you go to talks and coffee shops and so on, especially with laptops, where that Apple logo seems to shine everywhere. And so there's only one conclusion, and that is Apple is doomed. So.
Oh, good. Thank you for that very positive note.
So I just thought I'd mention that for people who are thinking about buying Apple products over the holiday season.
Yeah, and one more little statistic in there to throw in, at least again, as of today, Apple has hit a new high when it comes to being the most valuable company on the planet. They already were, but they just took it up a couple more notches. So,
and they're also number one for customer service as well.
Yeah. Like you say, doomed. No question about it.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of a momentous occasion because we have our very first open mic caller comment. And I'm kind of happy about it because for a long time we've wanted to find ways to get listeners to be able to call in easily. We finally figured it out. Folks, if you would like to comment on something here, MacVoices.com/open mic has all the details, the phone number and everything. But the message, Ted, was for you, for one of the discussions we had before. So, this is they love you, Ted.
Okay.
This is from Bob, and he has at least part of a solution.
Bob loves me?
Bob loves you. Bob loves you.
I was hoping for something a little different when you said they love you, but okay, I'll go for Bob.
We got to start somewhere. But Bob had a suggestion or an idea for the photo problem you described last time, and your friend that was having it. So this is what Bob suggests.
Hi, this is Bob for Open Mic. I heard the episode a little while ago that Ted Landau was talking about the difficulty of getting some photos off of an iPhone to iPhoto. Well, I think the key is, and he's probably already figured it out, but the key is not to use iPhoto for the import. If you use image capture instead, tell iPhoto don't try and open up your iPhone, and tell image capture that, okay, I want the iPhone to open up image capture instead. You have the ability to selectively choose what photos you want, and then you can delete those photos off the iPhone once you've transferred them. So I think the initial setup, because image capture doesn't make it obvious what needs to be set, would need to be done by someone like Ted. But after that, his friend probably could do it all by herself without his assistance.
Yes, my response to Bob is he is exactly correct in terms of how that process would make it more efficient to get exactly the photos you want in iPhoto without getting other photos in. It's certainly what I do. I download all the photos that I take from my iPhone through image capture. I then sort through the photos, discarding the ones that I don't want, and then importing just the ones that I want into iPhoto. And I mean, you could do it the other way. You can cull them out. It's not like you can't delete them from iPhoto once you get them in there, but I just find it easier than trying to deal with the iPhoto interface. It just seems faster. And so I agree with him. And I also agree with him that I probably have to help the person set it up first, because they never, as I said last time, this is not a person with very many computer skills and is anxious about computers. In fact, for years, she didn't even want to touch a computer because she was sure that death would ensue shortly afterwards. So I'm certain I would have to help her, and I'm not even sure I would succeed, because it would just be another layer of complexity. But the other part, even if all that worked, is it did not address the other half of what I was talking about, which is where the real problem came in when I was trying to help her. And that is, she would take photos with the iPhone and have them in her camera roll, which I'm happy to say that Apple brought back with the latest update to iOS 8. And then she would want some of those pictures to stay on her iPhone. And I was encouraging her to think, don't just use your camera roll as a repository. That's not the way Apple designed it. What you're supposed to do is periodically take the photos off of your camera roll, import them into into iPhoto, or something like that. And at that point, now she still wants some of those photos that she took off and presumably deleted from her camera roll. She wants them back. And I said, well, how do you get them back? You get them back by putting them into an album in iPhoto. And then you have to go to iTunes. And then you have to connect your iPhone to iTunes, to your Mac. And then you have to find the photo section of the iPhone in iTunes. And then you have to, if you haven't already done it previously, then you have to select the playlist that you now created for these new photos that you want to have back on your iPhone. Then you have to hit the sync button and hope that it syncs correctly and those photos are back there. And you have to do that pretty much every time you want to get photos back into your phone. Not quite necessarily every step, but many of those steps. And that was just more than this person could deal with. And like I said last time, often I'm not as sympathetic maybe as I should be to people who are having these problems. And I'm saying to myself, this seems so simple, I can't understand why they can't figure it out. But not this time. I was saying, actually, as I now think about it, it isn't such a simple sequence of events. And I could see why people who aren't particularly skilled would have trouble doing it. So and that would still be the case even with image capture.
This kind of touches on something we started to talk a little bit about last time, and I wanted to go deeper. The lack of competence with the technology, and I don't say that in a harsh way, but just we seem to be expecting people to learn more about their technology, learn how to use these things, and follow the pathways that are prescribed, as opposed to just kind of being able to do what they want. If your friend, for example, had taken Polaroids and she wanted to stick 10 of them in her wallet to be able to show people, it's pretty easy to do. You just stick them in your wallet and go. But we have the channels back and forth, and I've realized you could argue about, okay, you got to take that situation to a photo store, a printer, get them printed and all that. But what is it about it that we can't seem to come up with simple solutions to some of these things? Is it just we're trying to deal with too much volume, or are you and I just too tech-oriented to be able to see it the way other people see it?
Well, I think it's still a complicated piece of technology. And Apple, particularly, and other companies in general, have managed to put a layer over the complexity to make it seem simple when things are working well. And often things do work well, and so often things do seem quite simple. But when things go wrong, often it exposes the underlying complexity. And the problems can be very difficult to solve. And I seem to have been on a jag, which is where we started going last time. I can go for months where almost nothing goes wrong. Every once in a while, something will go wrong, of course, but not much. But recently, for the last month or so, it seems like my Mac Pro in particular has wanted to torment me, and virtually anything that could possibly go wrong was going wrong. And what I became struck with was not only how many things went wrong, which was just annoying. At one point, I started stomping around the house saying, "That's it, I've had it with computers. I'm getting rid of all of them." But I didn't. But the other aspect of it was, again, trying to picture. I managed to solve almost all of them, not all of them actually, but realizing how difficult it would be to solve some of these problems if you weren't skilled in using computers. And I could just give you a few examples. Now, I'm looking at a list here in front of me, some notes that I made in case we wind up talking about this, and I don't even know where to begin. One thing, let's talk about one big one that happened. I was considering getting a iMac with Retina display, which I still might. But I decided I was going to wait for the next generation, so to speak. Usually within about 6 months after Apple comes out with a new product like that, they come out with a sort of revision A of the product line that adds some new features that people had wanted. Like maybe I remember, like, for a MacBook Pro, maybe the first version didn't have backlighting of the keyboard and other minor things like that, and then all of a sudden they come out with the next version that says, all those little things like backlighting that you didn't like about the first version. Well, Apple has added them all in this update. So I'm sort of waiting for that Apple has added all the little things that you wanted update. So, which may or may not happen. Anyway, I'm getting off the subject. The bottom line there is I've decided not to get the iMac for now. And that got me thinking about my Mac Pro, the old cheese grater Mac Pro. I have a 2009 Mac Pro. And one of the issues that I've been having with my Mac Pro is that it's in danger always of running out of hard drive space, because I'm still using hard drives. In one case, it has four hard drive bays inside the Mac Pro. I have all of them in use, but the largest drive in any of those bays is a 650 gigabyte drive, which turns out not to be enough for my usage. And so I said, as long as I'm keeping this Mac Pro for another half year, who knows how long, and it's functioning very nicely, I might add, I said, let's get rid of that problem. Hard drives are so cheap, I'm going to just upgrade everything. And so I upgraded. I replaced 3 out of the 4 bays in my Mac Pro. I got a 480 gigabyte SSD to upgrade from the 125 SSD that I'd had before. And then I got 2 3 terabyte Hitachi hard drives. Really nice. The end result, now that everything is working, is that the hard drives are faster, of course, and the SSD drive now handles more readily, stuff that goes into cache and virtual memory and stuff like that. It seems to be handled better now. There's more room, and the end result is everything is even faster than it was before and quieter than it was before, because I don't hear hard drive access as much. So it's really great, but it caused a number of problems when I tried to do that, one problem happened with backups. My backups got all screwed up, right, which I had thought about, but not sufficiently. For instance, I use, and these are the sort of things that you have to anticipate and figure out how you're going to work out. I use Backblaze as an online cloud backup. And as soon as I put all these new drives online, it claimed that it couldn't find the drives that it was supposed to back up, and was halting the backup. And so I had to deal with that. And I thought, actually, I'm quite impressed with Backblaze. I don't know what they did exactly, but I wound up, I figured, I said, I'm going to have to just start over at this point, because the drives have been renamed. They're different drives. There's no way that they're going to be able to transfer the information I have. So I was ready to sort of wipe out my Backblaze backup and start over. But I wound up renaming the drives to the original names that I had once I got the old drives out. And it just sort of figured it out at that point, and wound up even transferring. It's not worth going into all the details, but I wound up merging 2 drives together because I now had a much bigger drive. And it wound up, as far as I can tell, transferring the stuff from the old drive that I had gotten rid of to the merge drive without having to recopy everything. It just knew that stuff was the correct stuff to copy. So it was quite slick the way it worked. But I eventually got it working. But it was a hassle for a while, and I didn't have the backup. Time Machine, which I also use because I have multiple types of backups, had its own problems where, first of all, I overlooked the fact that when you add new drives, apparently, at least the way I have it configured, Time Machine automatically will try to back up any new drives that you add, even though the default is to add them. And so what happened was, again, it was having trouble finding some of the old drives that I had. Plus, it now was trying to copy all these new drives that I had added, including some that were backing each other up as mirrored backups. So it was trying to back them up twice. And the net result was it was trying to back up much more than there was room on the drive to handle. And it didn't immediately give me that error message. Instead, what happened is everything slowed down on the computer as it was trying to do all this backing up and wasn't capable of doing it. And eventually I had to sort that out. And then as a result of all that, I got that message that I've talked about on Twitter recently, where the most ridiculous message that Apple produces, I think, where it says something like, we've tried to verify your hard drive, and there was some difficulty verifying it, and so we're going to have to recreate your backup. And makes it sound like this is some little hiccup, but what it actually means is you're pooched. The backup isn't going to work anymore, and you have to start over. And then it takes another day before it all backs up again. So I had to deal with that, and then I kept getting that error message, and I had to figure out why it wouldn't go away now that it came back, which is often the case. And on and on and on. It took me several days to solve all the little problems like that, mostly with backups, but some other ones as well. And then there was the issue, which I finally gave up on, when I transferred my system software from the old SSD to the new SSD. I forgot to install OS X first, which meant now there was no recovery volume on the new SSD, and I would have had to erase everything and start over to get a recovery volume on that. And I said, forget that. So another thing like that got minorly screwed up as a result. And I'm just saying, well, this is not, I want to install a new hard drive, which is already, I guess, somewhat of a technical thing to do from most people's perspective. But it was much more of a big deal than I would have initially anticipated. So that was one thing. I have a whole list here.
Well, before we hit any more on the list, I'm curious. When you went to, I guess, move your system folder and all back, how did you use it? Did you use Migration Assistant or clone it or what?
I never use Migration Assistant. I don't know. I don't like it, and I can't exactly justify why. But it never seems to do what I want it to do whenever I've tried, and so I've just stopped trying. What I do is I use SuperDuper, okay. And I just copy it from using SuperDuper from one volume to another.
But we're back to that thing where SuperDuper. Well, to be fair, I haven't looked right now, but they don't support the cloning of the recovery partition.
Yes, I think Carbon Copy Cloner does, as yes. I recall, but SuperDuper does not. So the way it would have worked with SuperDuper, it would be to, as Apple suggests, install a sort of empty version of OS X. Just install like a new like a factory default version of OS X, and then that would install the recovery partition. And once you had that in place, then you could use SuperDuper to replace the factory install with your backup, but it would not destroy the recovery partition. So that's how you do it. And then I thought about doing that. I said, okay, I'll erase it. It'll take me a day. I'll erase it. But then I said, oh my God, no, this is not, because once I erase it and then copy over the new one, it could cascade all my backups again, where we'll suddenly claim that this isn't what they were thinking was going to be backed up, and then I'll have to deal with an assortment of backups. I said, no, there's no way I'm going to go through that right now. So it's off the table for now.
That's just to keep maybe a flash recovery drive.
Yeah, I'm not too worried. So I have lots of ways to recover if something goes wrong. So.
Now, I'm not suggesting that it's okay that all that happened, but it's some of that to some degree is almost understandable at the current level of technology with replacing a hard drive. Did you have anything that just out of the blue started not working for you, or was this all related to the migration?
No, there are lots of things. I'll give you 2 or 3 other examples. Again, this is not the simplest thing, but one thing you should probably never do is launch console. Most people, a lot of people who are not skilled at using computers probably don't even know what console is, or would never think of launching. So we're perfectly fine there. I'm preaching to the converted, so to speak. But whenever I launch console, inevitably it seems there's some error message in console that is repeating itself every 3 seconds. And then there's just this long string of the same message over and over again. It's not the same message. It varies from week to week. And I inevitably will try to figure out, why is it repeating this message over and over again? What is it? I will do a Google search where I copy the text of the error message into Google and do a search to see if other people have reported the problem. And sometimes people have no idea any more than I do. Sometimes they do have an idea what's going on, but not how to fix it. Sometimes they have an idea how to fix it, but it doesn't really apply to me, and so on and on. And occasionally I will be able to figure out why it's doing this, and often, and just as often, not. The good news is that it often has no apparent effect on what I'm doing. It's not like I went to console to solve that problem. It's just I went to console to see something else entirely, and then get surprised by this and then wonder what's going on. But it is impressive when I launch console how many things console can say is going wrong. This failed to happen, this didn't work, this didn't, and yet the computer functions relatively normally. But there were a couple that I had just in this past week, 2 different ones I had just in this past week. One that happened this morning, actually, and I went online to see what the error message meant, and it led to a whole discussion of something that Apple changed in Yosemite. I won't bother you with all the details, but a difference between Mavericks and Yosemite that could have led to this message occurring, and people weren't. And then people start saying, you should open a bug report with Apple, and this is something that you can't fix on your own. And I said, forget it. As long as the computer is functioning, I'm not going to deal with that. But it just becomes another part of the background noise that I have to deal with. And then there was this thing in Bugs and Fixes in Macworld magazine, or Macworld website, I should say, that I posted on Friday, where I was having a problem since updating to Yosemite, where my MacBook Pro, its shared computer name, kept renaming itself. So it started off as MacBook Pro, then it became MacBook Pro 2, MacBook Pro 3, MacBook Pro 4, and I wound up having like a half a dozen MacBook Pro names over time, and then the shared devices area of my Finder sidebars would list all of them. So I'd see my MacBook listed there 6 times, none of which were functioning, except maybe one, the most recent one. And if I recorrected the name to the original name, it would start happening again, and I had to figure out what was going on there. And again, it appeared to be a bug in Yosemite that you couldn't fix. There were some workarounds. I mean, couldn't fix is bit misleading. There were some workarounds, but not really solving the problem. For instance, it turned out that if you turned off Wake for network access in the energy saver preferences, that made the problem go away for most people, and it did for me. But that option does something, and if you actually wanted that option, that wasn't the greatest solution. And so again, it looks like it's a bug that will require that Apple fix if you really want it taken care of. And, so that was going on. I had a whole iTunes sync fiasco where suddenly. I looked, and the area for my iPhone where it said how the stuff was divided, it didn't say audio, video, photos anymore. It just said one giant other. And when I tried to sync it, it wouldn't sync everything that was supposed to sync. And then I went and I saw that Rob Griffiths, the guy that did Mac OS 10 Hints, that Rob Griffiths had been covering this in his personal blog, and it happened to him, and he had written to Tim Cook about it, actually, because he got so frustrated with his inability to solve this problem. And I started looking at that and all the things that he suggested to do, and some of them I said, there's no way I'm going to bother doing this. This can't. So eventually I erased the entire iPhone and restored it as if to factory condition, and then then from the backup, which I hoped wasn't corrupt at this point, restored my iPhone, and that seemed to fix the problem. Except that the next day I noticed that I couldn't get my notes to sync on the iPhone. All the notes that I had were syncing every place else fine except notes, and nothing I did could get notes to sync. And then I said, okay, I restarted the iPhone again. That seemed to fix that. So that was going on. There was an issue with my HP LaserJet printer where it would shut off on its own. This annoyed me with HP tech support, by the way. It would shut off on its own if I didn't use it for a day or two. And so I went and looked at all the settings. There was some setting that seemed to suggest that it was an auto shut off, and I changed it to never, but it didn't have any effect. It kept shutting off on its own. I went online, did a Google search, didn't come up with anything. Went to the HP website. There were no support documents that covered this problem. And so then I called HP tech support and no, I didn't call them. I initiated an online chat from the HP tech support website. And they wanted $40 to discuss the problem with me. And I said, I just want to know if, I said, I'm worried it's a hardware repair. If this is a software problem, I'll try to deal with it. But if it's a hardware problem, I'll take it in. No, they weren't going to tell me. I said, well, what if I pay the $40? Are you, and you can't fix the problem? Do I get my $40 back? No, there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to fix the problem. We guarantee that we'll give it our best effort. I said, okay, well, I said, all right, no thanks. So after that, I said, I'm going to give one last try. I went to the Hewlett-Packard support forums, as opposed to their support documents, where customers discuss things among themselves, just like in the Apple community forums. And I searched for this problem, and I found one thread where somebody suggested turning off a feature on the printer that only applied if your printer was connected to a Windows machine anyway, so it wasn't going to be relevant to me to have it on or off. And he said that would eliminate the problem. I didn't have a lot of faith, but I turned it off, and it's now been about a week, and I haven't had the problem. So I'm thinking, if it really sort of irritated me about Hewlett-Packard. If they knew that was the answer, they should have had a support document about that, in my view. And if they knew that was the answer, the idea that they were going to charge me $40 and say, okay, now that we have your $40, turn this thing off and you'll be fine. Thank you very much. Goodbye. It just seems kind of I don't know, not very user friendly, but at the least. So I had to deal with that, and I have others here. I can stop here at this point, but you get the picture. There are all these things, many of which are bugs that there is no real fix for, or very little understanding about how they work, and no easy place to go to get the answer, and requires a bit of effort. And I'm trying to imagine if again, like I said, if someone who is not very skilled at using computers had to face all this over the course of a week or two. There's no way they would be able to do it on their own, clearly. They'd have to get outside help, and it would be very frustrating.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of the newest version of Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Folks, I used to use Text Expander Touch with a number of applications on iOS 7 that had been specifically enhanced with Text Expander functionality, and it was quite useful. All of the snippets I'd created for my desktop were right there waiting for me. And then something changed. iOS 8 was released, bringing custom keyboards to the iPhone and iPad. And then came Text Expander 3 and its custom keyboard. And suddenly, everything changed. Text Expander worked just like it did on my Mac, and just like it should. Anywhere a keyboard was available, the Text Expander 3 keyboard was available, and with it, snippets everywhere. Not just in specifically designated apps, but everywhere. Mail, messages, calendars, social media clients, everywhere. What I discovered was a whole new set of snippets that I needed to create because I use my iPhone and iPad in different ways. And there were lots of snippets that weren't useful on my Mac, but were massively useful in iOS. I can now construct text messages in a few seconds that would have normally taken a lot more seconds, maybe even minutes. And I can be clear on exactly what I want to say instead of having to revert to internet abbreviations or my own secret code that no one else understands. Emails can be answered in a much more complete fashion, and whatever signature I want to use is only a short snippet away. And that's just the beginning. Frequently accessed website URLs, date abbreviations, timestamps. The usefulness of Text Expander is limited only by your imagination and the recognition of things that you type over and over again. Getting Text Expander 3 for your iOS device opens up a whole new world of time saving. Get Text Expander 3 in the iOS App Store or visit smilesoftware.com to find out more about what it can do for you. And of course, don't forget Text Expander for your Mac, too. They both share the same snippet library, synced through Dropbox, so that what you create on your Mac is available in iOS, and what you create in iOS can be used on your Mac. Text Expander from Smile, my most used productivity utility. I love it, and you will too. Thanks to Smile for their support of MacVoices. The whole support thing, let's go down that avenue for just a second. I understand it's extremely expensive. There's no question about it to have support. And I also know we've all seen the crazy tech support calls that people get that are just, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're abusive, sometimes they're just plain stupid. But at the same time, it does bother me that with things that are supposed to work and aren't working, and clearly aren't working, like yours, that they're asking us to pay for support, or that they're abandoning you to the support forums to search and hopefully find things. Now, you and I are probably reasonably skilled at digging through there and getting some answers or having some intelligence to do it. But you look at something, it's like, okay, if I bought a hammer and it didn't work, there's no tech support for hammers, but I could probably go and get somebody to confirm that it's not working and give me a new one or do something. With this, it's advertised as working like this. Okay, there's a bug, there's a problem, I get it, but there should be an easy way to categorize these and help you and get the information. And I know it's a complex problem, so that sounds like a very simplistic attitude, but you see plenty of rants on Twitter and Facebook about people that are just super frustrated with the customer service they are or are not getting. And I know I like, anytime I have a good customer service story to tell, I try to post it on Twitter and say, hey, they really took care of me. They really did a good job on this, because people need to know and who's doing the good job. And like this one, unfortunately, who's not doing such a good job.
Yes. And what really irritates me is the poor state of the tech support website part of the company's website. That very often what the situation I found with Hewlett Packard is true in general, and that is you go to their support documents and they are almost invariably worthless. The troubleshooting part has no troubleshooting whatsoever. What they call troubleshooting is really how-to articles. So in other words, there'll be an article that says you can't print you can't get the printer to work over your Wi-Fi network. What should you do? Well, that sounds like troubleshooting, but when you go there, all it really tells you is what's in the manual, so to speak. It's maybe you're not, maybe there's something wrong with your Wi-Fi network. Maybe you didn't enter the right password. I mean, nothing about there's nothing that says, okay, you did everything correctly, but it's still not working. Now what? That's when it gets into the real troubleshooting. And there's no documents about that. All of the bugs sort of stuff and the stuff that isn't working correctly that you can't easily figure out, there are any documents about that. And Apple is better than most. You'll find stuff like that on Apple's stuff, but most companies have nothing at that level. And it's really frustrating because then you have to call them to get the help. Hewlett Packard really did not do a good job as far as I'm concerned. I had to call Epson about a problem. There's another problem I had where I had, which I still haven't quite figured out, actually I had several problems with my Epson printer. I have an inkjet printer as well as a laserjet printer. And the Epson tech support was free, and they did help me solve one of the two problems I was having with their printer. The other one they were unable to help me with. And it was a weird thing where I couldn't, I'll just mention it briefly, where I couldn't get the I couldn't get the scanner portion of my all-in-one printer to scan to the computer, to scan to the computer. It would scan and scan to print out a copy, but I couldn't get it to scan to save a file on the computer. And the odd thing was it would work to my MacBook Pro, but not to my Mac Pro. So clearly it wasn't a hardware problem as far as I could tell with the printer. There was probably something on my Mac Pro that wasn't working the way it's supposed to. And I had no idea what it was. I reinstalled all the printer software, deleted it all, reinstalled it, checked everything. I mean, did everything I could think of, looked through the Epson website for anything that might suggest that. and called them. They walked me through several suggestions of their own, none of which worked. And in the end, we couldn't figure it out. So again, another one of those problems where I still don't have a solution. And speaking of problems of which I still don't have a solution, here's one we've talked about before. Ever since updating to Yosemite on my Mac Pro, every time I restart the computer, it goes to the default desktop pictures and default audio setting, even though I keep changing them. And again, it only happens on my Mac Pro, not on my MacBook Pro. So there's clearly something. In fact, it doesn't even happen on another user account on my Mac Pro. It's just a user account that I use basically. I've tried deleting preferences files. I've tried deleting some database that is responsible for desktop pictures. I've tried to find what might be involved for the sound setting, and I've looked, of course, online for suggested solutions, and nothing that I have found on my own or by searching through Google searches has come up with the answer. I still don't know what it is, but it's a minor thing. Every time I restart, I just reset those things to what I want them to be. It takes me another 30 seconds when I restart the computer, but it's just annoying. And another thing that that goes wrong that I have no idea why.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because I'll throw one out too that I haven't been able to solve. I found some discussion in the Apple support forum, but if I take a TV show, I think this is legal, and I'm serious about that. I think I'm okay, but this is what I'm doing anyway, is take a show, record it on my TiVo, then transfer it over to my Mac, and use iFlix to populate the show information and the artwork, and works great. Pulls it in, identifies everything just fine. Then sync it over to my iPad, and the artwork won't go with it. I just get little gray squares. And the support forums right now, there's a discussion going on there. It seems that something changed in the new version of the iOS 8, that requires TV shows, not anything else, but just TV shows, to have square artwork as opposed to widescreen or rectangular artwork. And so when it doesn't see what it wants, it just doesn't copy it. And nobody's found a workaround yet. So there's one, folks. If you know of a workaround, let me know, please. It's not a big deal, but it's just annoying, and it's not the way it should be. So, yeah, plenty of these little things that just can drive you a little crazy if you're not careful.
Yeah. And all these things happened, like I said, to me in the last few weeks. So for the last few days, things have been relatively calm, and so I'm hopeful as we go into the holiday season that maybe the computer is taking mercy on me. So
hopefully you don't get a lump of coal in your stocking. So,
and speaking of the holiday season, one last thing here. I have some bit of good news.
Oh, good.
I went to a talk. I live near UC Berkeley. And I went to a science talk at Berkeley a couple of months ago, and it was for a local startup called Dash Robotics. I think dashrobotics.com will take you to the website. And and they're doing a lot of, as the name implies, robotic stuff. And one of the things that they had was they developed a robot that used like legs rather than wheels to get around. And the idea was that it would be able to, much like animals with legs, be able to go over terrain that wheels would have trouble with. And so it would be very good for going over rough and changing terrains where you didn't want people to go. And it was working quite well. And they talked about it. And then they, for fun, and probably for money, they developed a consumer version of this, which essentially is a piece. You'll see if you go to the website. I don't think you can buy them right now because it was a beta thing, Kickstarter type thing, and they're out for now. There'll be more available next year. But it's a piece of it looks like a piece of thick paper, like almost like cardboard paper, with punch outs. And so you punch out the pieces, and there's about 7 pieces. They call it origami. And so you have these 7 pieces, and then there's some electronics that come in a separate box. And then there's about 12 pages of instructions. and you have to fold all these pieces and use Elmer's glue to glue them in the right sort of way. It takes about an hour and a half to do it all. And I was doing it. I was convinced that this is never going to work. And then put this here and there, and gluing it, and the wheels were aligned in some way where I wasn't sure they were even going to be able to turn freely, and not the wheels for the machine, but the gears that were going to turn the legs, so to speak. And I got all done. And then there's an iPhone app that you use to control it. And well, I got done with it. I put it down on the floor, got the iPhone app out, and it took off. It was zooming around the house like crazy. So it was quite impressive. I was having a little trouble getting it to go in a straight line, but I'm getting the knack of that, and it's quite impressive. Now it goes onto carpeting and back onto wood and over things, and exactly like they said it would. So if you're, I was going to say I was going to recommend it as a holiday gift, except I don't think you can buy one right now. But if they are available, it's a really fun holiday gift. So
good
suggestion there.
Please send me the link for the show notes if you can find it. I'd love to look at it myself.
Like I said, try-robotics.com.
Try-robotics. Okay.
Yeah, I think that'll take you to it.
All right, good. Well, I have one other cautionary tale that just happened to me this afternoon that I think is worth repeating, although it's not exactly on point here. But I got a call on my cell phone, which is a number that I don't give out to everyone. And it was an 866 number, so all right, you answer it. And a robotic voice says, this is card services. There's been a data breach or there's been a breach on your card. Please hold the line. Or no, it said enter your card number for more information. Well, which card number? Which credit card? No identification, no nothing. So yeah, I said agent. It said, if you want to speak to an agent, push 1. All right, push 1. So, go down through a tree a little bit, and I'm supposed to get the agent, disconnects. So I went through this twice because, it's a concern. Finally, on the third time, I got some guy to answer. And, this call is being recorded and all that. And I said, can you tell me who you are and what card company you represent? No, sorry, can't tell you. What's your card number? No. Which bank do you represent? Your card services. What does card services do? Who do you? I can't tell you that. Well, can you tell me about this breach that is mine? Well, no, you have to give me your card number. Well, you have my phone number, so theoretically you should have my card. We went back and forth like this, and he kept getting increasingly rude, which is clearly not the way to do it. And, well, if you're not going to give me your card number, I can't help you. Well, then, buddy, and, well, I didn't say it, but I know what I thought, and hung up and immediately logged into the banks that I have cards with and checked, and there are no fraud alerts or anything. So on the side of customer service, folks, if you get one of these, don't fall for it. Please don't punch your number in or give it to somebody. Log in and with your account and check it first online, but do not respond unless they can identify who they are and that you have an account with that company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's safe to say no credit card company would ever ask you to give them your credit card number over the phone to begin with. Like you said, they will know the credit card number, so they don't need you to give it to them. They might ask for some confirming number, like the last 4 digits of your social security number or something like that to confirm that you're who you say you are. But as soon as they ask for your credit card number, it's like 99.9% certain that's a fraud to begin with. So.
Yeah. And there were, I'm sorry for the bias, but there were no, thick foreign accents or anything. It sounded just like you and me, but, it's just like, but what really got me is, you can always tell these people were working from a script. This guy wasn't working from a script. And if he couldn't get the card number out of me, he wanted to move on to somebody else.
Yeah,
so
that's the whole point is to get your card number. If you're not going to be cooperative, then on to the next person. Exactly.
Yeah. So if you get those kind of calls, folks, please, please, please be careful. Ted, I wanted to end also on some good news, and that is Apple Pay. I can't say that I've had any amazing Apple Pay experiences except to say that it works. I've go to Panera and order a sandwich and touch my iPhone and bang, it's paid for, and the lady hands me a receipt and food, and I walk away. It really does work exactly the way it should. And it's surprising, and I'm not usually one to be quite that paranoid, says he who just got the 800 number call, about security. But it does make me feel a lot better when I'm not having to swipe a card. You know, I'm using my thumbprint to pay on my phone. And so maybe I'm buying into the propaganda, but it just feels better to me.
I agree. And that is my cat.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, Ted.
And she has a personality all her own. Yes, I'll be done soon.
Yeah.
Come here. Come on. Yeah, come on. Sorry to disrupt this. But yes, I entirely agree with you. I really like it. And there's not much else to say. I've used it several times, and it works very smoothly. The only problem I have is with me. There was one time, actually, it wasn't working. I think I mentioned this last time, and I tried 5 times to get it to work. And finally, the cashier said, yeah, it's supposed to work, but it didn't work for the last few people who tried it either. I said, well, now you tell me. I tried 5 times, I couldn't get it to work. But the other time I had a problem, I just got flustered. I don't know why. It sort of flustered me a little bit. But, you know, when it says on the screen it appeared, put your finger to identify your thumb, your fingerprint or whatever the message is. I don't know the exact wording. And there's a picture of your fingerprint to indicate what you're supposed to do. And I kept pressing the picture on the screen rather than pressing the home button, which is what obviously you're supposed to do. It took me about a minute to realize that of course I knew that, but I just got thrown for a second seeing the picture there. And I'm like, why isn't it working? Oh, it's not working because I'm stupid. And so I eventually pressed the home button, and yes, it worked. But aside from that, whenever I've used it and now I know what I'm doing, it's worked just great. Yeah. And I do like that you don't have to enter your credit card number. There was one place, I forget where I used it, and then they wanted me to confirm my identity in some way. I forget. I had to enter my phone number, I think, or something like that. And I found that to be a little irritating because that's the sort of thing that defeats the purpose of it being so quick and transparent. If you have to go start entering things, then it's almost like dealing with a credit card again. So I hope that doesn't become too common.
And I think it's probably just everybody getting used to this, especially some cashiers who have taught, been taught one way, and this is something brand new, and they don't really understand it completely yet. So, I don't know. Well, I hope that all your tech problems calm down and that you have a nice, calm, quiet Thanksgiving holiday, and we'll see you back here again soon. Yeah.
Actually, I think the best thing you could do to have a calm, quiet holiday in that regard is to just not use those devices for a few days.
What do you think the chances of that are?
Not very good for me, unfortunately.
Me neither.
And I've been playing a lot of games recently too, as I've had some more time. So it's addictive. It's no doubt about it. I'm addicted to a digital lifestyle. I think it's safe to say.
Sounds like the title for a book.
Yep. But I'm going to try my best to take a little bit of time off for the holidays. I think it's a good thing to take a break. Yeah.
Well, maybe next time when we get together, you can talk a little bit about some of the games you've been playing and the things that you've found worthy of your time.
Sure.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care.
All right. You too, folks. Happy holidays to you as well. And now we have our first open mic comment. If you'd like to talk to us, if you have something to say to Ted, to me, to any of our guests, or just want to rant a little bit, MacVoices.com/open mic. Until the next time, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard by visiting MacVoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.